Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Welcome to another Quran study, brothers and sisters. We are going to start reading from chapter 26, verse 210. The chapter's name is The Poets. The title of 210 is False Messengers Incapable of Preaching the Worship of God Alone. 210. The devils can never reveal this. They neither would nor could, for they are prevented from hearing. Therefore, do not idolize besides God any other God, lest you incur the retribution. The footnote of 210, it says, a false messenger is a messenger of Satan, for he is the fabricator of the most horrendous lie. Such a messenger can never denounce idolatry or preach the worship of God alone. So we can clearly see here that God is preventing anyone who is not a messenger of God, that they cannot understand this book. They cannot reveal a book like this. They are prevented by doing so by God, and God declares that those messengers, those false messengers, they are the messengers of Satan. And like we know that in all these years, lots of false messengers have come, and the messenger of the covenant also tells us about this. And when they come, they don't preach God alone, right? They preach, they always have these extra things that they preach, things that are important for them, for this worldly life of theirs. Some of them are want to be popular. Some of them care so much about money. Like most of them, they actually care about money and fame. They want to be treated as like. Um, and you have these people all around, and not all of them call themselves messengers. Like you have a lot of people that they say that they are like helping people out, and that they are telling people the truth, etc. But in reality, all what they care is most of the times it's money actually. um, and people around them, they are listening to them, they are following them. They drive in these luxurious cars, while preaching the people to be like having a poor life. They are living in this extremely luxurious life and taking money from them, and lots of people are following them. So but in the Quran, God is telling us about these people, these false messengers, how they act, and that they never can preach God alone, and they can never denounce idolatry. It also adds, God's messenger of the covenant, you shall preach to the people who are closest to you, and lower your wing for the believers who follow you. If they disobey you, then say, I disown what you do, and put your trust in the Almighty, most merciful, who sees you when you meditate during the night, and your frequent prostrations. He is the hearer, the omniscient. Shall I inform you upon whom the devils descend? They descend upon every guilty fabricator. They pretend to listen, but most of them are liars. So, in the footnote also, it says these verses refer to God's messenger of the covenant. The sum of the geometrical value of Rashid Khalifa, 1230, plus the verse number 214, is 1444, which makes 19 times 76, or 19 times 19 times 4. And the sum of the verse numbers from 214 through 223 is 2185, and this makes it a total 19 times 115. Um, One of the things that I saw here is it says that, and your frequent prostrations. So we can clearly see in the videos of Dr. Rashad that he makes a lot of prostrations, right? And then he says, Tubu ilallah, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and God also says that he should preach to the people who are closest to you, which he did, and lower your wing for the believers who follow you. So he was like in these videos, we could clearly see that he was trying to help the people around him, like preaching them, etc. And there were also moments when the people, they were not really listening to him, and they were not obedient to him, and still he was doing his best. But it's also a test, of course, for the people around the messenger. There are certain ways how to behave towards the messenger, and certain ways to do these things. And if people didn't do, yeah, then they fell from that. It's a filtration system that God has, and He shows there who the true believers are. And like those people who were around him, they were believing in some of the things that he was saying, and some of the things they didn't believe. But we know from the Quran that God says that the believers, they say when they hear, they obey. And he had to deal with these people, right? But it's also an example for us of how people can be. In 224, we read, as for the poets, they are followed only by the strayers. Do you not see that their loyalty shifts according to the situation, and that they say what they do not do? Exempt are those who believe, lead a righteous life, commemorate God frequently, and stand up for their rights. Surely the transgressors will find out what their ultimate destiny is. So, 2025, he said, do you not see that their loyalty shifts according to the situation? So, when the situation is, when they for their own good, like they do it. But when it isn't, then they turn their backs and they stop supporting. Um, and this is something uh, like this is in every situation actually a bad characteristic for someone. Like you can't trust such person, right? For whom you know that they only behave in a certain way, that they only be with you if it fits them, and if it doesn't, they just leave you. So, and God tells us here, and it say that they say what they do not do. This is also an important thing. That if you preach something to the people, if you preach people and you tell them that they need to pray, for example, but you yourself don't do it, like this is, in my opinion, some kind of a hypocrisy as well, right? Because you pretend to be a good person, you pretend to follow these. Commandments of God, but in reality, you aren't doing them. And in 227, God explains the righteous ones. He said, exempt are those who believe, lead the righteous life, commemorate God frequently, and stand up for their rights. So we shouldn't be what is it called in English? Like we shouldn't be sheeps. We shouldn't just follow someone or like we really should stand up for our rights. If there is something not righteous going on, we should stand up for that. This also counts um, for the situation where people say things about God. The messenger explains this to us, and he said God wants solid friends. If someone says something about God which is not right, then we should stand up for that. Like this is how I understand by stand up for their rights. It's not only for our personal things, but also um, and this is something what I found the best way of standing for the rights, right? In a moment where people are talking about God and they are saying something which is not true, which is a lie, then we should definitely tell them and correct them that is wrong. Sometimes people are afraid of the feelings of other people. Today, in I also listened to the sound recording of the messenger, where he stated that true believers they really care more about God than others actually. Like we shouldn't be afraid of saying things, saying righteous things about God and about submission, and be afraid of the feelings of people. Like, oh, if I'm going to say this, then they are going to feel bad. Or like, if it's your family member or a friend of yours, we shouldn't really care about that because we should care more about being righteous and care more about the truth than about their feelings. If we say something that it's going to hurt their feelings. And we learn, of course, that this is more important. 27, the end. Al-An'am. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Starts with the letters T and S, and it says constitute proofs of the Quran, a profound scripture, a beacon, a good news for the believers who observe the contact prayers, salat, give the obligatory charity zakat, and they are, with regard to the hereafter, absolutely certain. So this verse number 3 is one of the verses which we in the Quran. God always speaks about the contact prayer, salat, giving the obligatory charity zakat, and about this certainty that we are certain about the hereafter. This is also connected to the verse where God says that like that we have learned, of course, from the Message of the Covenant, that um, the ones for the minimum requirements to make it to heaven is believing in one God, um, believing in one God, believing in the hereafter, and being righteous, right? So believing in the hereafter is one of the minimum requirements to be able to make it to heaven if you die. These are the minimum requirements. So God tells us here that with regards of the hereafter, absolutely certain. So we shouldn't have any doubts about the hereafter. This means that we shouldn't have any doubts. Like a lot of people, even if they say that they are believers, even if they say that they are Muslims, for example, that they believe in the hereafter, but in reality they don't. I had this situation with one of my old friends. He was a Shiite, and we were talking about mentioning God alone. And there is this verse in the Quran where God says that. Um, I don't remember exactly the verse number, sorry, but basically it was the ones who do not believe in the hereafter. When God alone is mentioned, um, they their faces shrink with aversion. But when others are mentioned, they please help me after the study to remember this. But basically, it was about talking and saying about talking about God alone. And this showed actually that uh, they don't really believe in the hereafter, even if they say that they believe in the hereafter, but they really don't. They just say it. And this is a proof out of that. They can't mention God alone. And the messenger gives also an example. He says, go to them and, say the Shahada. Say La ilaha illallah only, like name God's name only. And they will repeat some other names beside it. I saw this with my own mother. Anytime when I was preaching, of course, the this message to her, every time when I said La ilaha illallah, she immediately said after me Muhammad Rasulullah. Like she couldn't have it that God alone was mentioned, only His name was mentioned. So, and these things shows us the quality of people, and it shows if someone is going to believe or not. Like you can see that clearly. Four, those who do not believe in the hereafter, we adorn their works in their eyes. Thus, they continue to blunder. This is also something very important, that you have some people in this world, maybe lots of people, who are doing good things, right? They are helping the poor. They are, yeah, they are like doing very good things in this world. But in reality, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in the hereafter, it's going to be vanished. It's not going to help you. So doing good deeds is not enough, because the minimum requirements that God gives us is not only he didn't say in the Quran the minimum requirement is just to be righteous and then you make it to heaven. It isn't like that. God also says that they should believe in only one God and believe in the hereafter. These are three minimum requirements. So being an atheist and doing good deeds, good things, is definitely not going to help them. Even if they do the best things in the world, even if they help thousands of millions of people, and you have those people, right? Some of them are very rich and they are giving so many money away. If it's really true, like the owner of what was it? Microsoft. He is giving a lot of money away for good deeds, but eventually it's not going to help him, because he is not following at least the three minimum requirements, of course. It is these who incur the worst retribution, and in the hereafter they will be worst losers. And for 27.1, the footnotes, it says, of course, see Appendix 1 for the meaning of these Quranic initials. Surah 27, of course, these also start with these letters, and these letters are a part of the 19 miracle in the Quran. God has created this book in such a way that only He could have done, right? If people or jinns, and with all the technology that we have, if we even try to make a similar thing like the Quran, we don't have to do a whole book, right? Only a few, maybe one chapter even. It is really impossible for humans to do something like this. And God was not talking about the what is it called, about the literature, right? He was because some of them tried. The messenger also says two guys probably tried to do the same, write things like within the Quran, but they didn't had any clue about this mathematical miracle of the Quran, because the Quran is the only book in the whole world which is mathematically um, designed. There is no other book, so it's an extremely unique book, and this proves that this book is the word of God, and hopefully people in the future will see this and accept this. Right now, if yeah, a lot of people actually, they don't do this. They don't investigate. They don't look at these details, right? Most of them don't really care. But the ones who care and the ones who do investigate, if they are honest people, if they have this clean heart, let's say, um then they can immediately see that this is something which can only be done by the creator of the heavens. 6. Surely you are receiving the Quran from a most wise, omniscient. 7. Moses. Recall that Moses said to his family, I see a fire. Let me bring you news therefrom, or a torch to warm you. When he came to it, he was called, Blessed is the one who is speaking from within the fire and those around it. Glory be to God, Lord of the universe. O Moses, this is me, God, the Almighty, most wise. Throw down your staff. When he saw it moving like a demon, he turned around and fled. O Moses, do not be afraid. My messengers shall not fear except those who commit a transgression. Then substitute righteousness after sinning. I am forgiving, most merciful. So, one of the things that I really found a little bit different, of course, than the other verses in the Quran is the way we can see here that God is speaking directly to him, right? And we can also read this from these verses. We are used to reading the Quran where God speaks uh, in what is it called, a multiple form, like, because he's using also the angels. For example, he's sending the angel Gabriel to the messengers to deliver them the message. So then he says, we have sent down this revelation because God is using the angels to do the job. But here is God directly speaking to Moses, and he says, of course, oh Moses, this is me, God, the Almighty, most wise. And Moses could hear God's or feel God's voice directly, of course. And God tells him, throw down your staff. And he did. And he threw down his staff, and it moved like a demon, whereupon Moses fled, of course. Like, this is a natural reaction, right? You are going to a place, you're all alone, you saw some light somewhere in the mountains, and then you hear a voice, right? You're all alone. When you threw your staff and becomes a demon, he was running away. So because he is a human, like, we would probably do the same. But then God says, "Oh Moses, do not be afraid. My messengers shall not fear. My messengers shall not fear. So, of course, there were moments when the messengers that God has chosen, they were maybe afraid in times, but God assures them that they don't have to fear. God is in full control, and He is the one who's protecting His messengers. One of the let's say one of my friends, he asked a question about the messengers being killed. Like Rashad was, of course, being stabbed and he was killed, um, and they used this as an excuse that he was not a messenger. He said, "Look what happened to him." But we know from the Quran that God tells us that the people they killed the messengers, right? And messengers being killed does not mean that God is not protecting them. Actually, when a messenger dies, a believer dies, they go directly to heaven. The same, like we know, of course, from the thing that happened with Abraham, they threw them to the fire, and then God said to fire to be cold and to be safe for him. So he didn't burn, he didn't die there. But there are also incidents, like for example, the incident with Jesus, where they tortured his body, they crucified his body, but in reality, they didn't crucify him or killed him because God took his soul out of his body. And the same also counts for Dr. Rashid Khalifa when he was killed. Like they killed his body, but his soul kept living, right, and went directly to heaven. So to understand this whole reality, uh, like we a lot of people, they don't really know who they are, right? The messenger of the covenant also explains this. He says the biggest problem in this world is not starvation, is not wars, is not all these problems that we have. The biggest problem is that people do not know who they really are. And they think that their bodies are themselves, but in reality it is the soul. Our souls are the ones that are going to live forever. Our body is going to die eventually after 18 or 100 years coming to this world, but our souls are made to live for eternity. And there are only a few places where we can go, three places: or we go to hell, or we go to the lower heaven, or we go to the high heaven. There is no other way, other place to go. And if you can't make it to heaven, then you will go to hell, and it is for eternity. So it is a um, um, very serious business. So while we are trying to understand submission, and we should, when we make our decisions, we should really think about this eternal life, right? And we shouldn't gamble with our souls. And most of the people do. They just gamble with their souls. They don't care about the hereafter. They don't care about anything that God has sent, a messenger or a book or a new message. They don't really care about this. So this makes them huge gamblers. Of course, the biggest gambler is the devil. Like he's still trying to prove, right, that he is capable of being a god, but he should see now that he can be a god. There's more to it to be a god than what he thinks it is, and yeah, he is going to lose eventually. Actually, he already lost, right? Put your hand in your pocket. It will come out white, without a blemish. These are among 9 miracles to Pharaoh and his people, for they are wicked. When our miracles were presented to them, clear and profound, they said, "This is obviously magic." So God showed 9 miracles to them, and one of those were that when Moses put his hand in his pocket and took it out, it was like white. It's without blemish. But the people, after seeing those miracles, they said, "This is obviously magic." Like, what else could they say? Um, right? They didn't believe in him. And then we, of course, know afterwards that Pharaoh, he asked for all the magicians in the town to come and to perform their magic. To prove that what Moses did was magic. But we know, of course, that when they saw what Moses did with his staff, they all prostrated. All the magicians, they prostrated, and they saw that this was clearly not a magic. But this, even this was not sufficient enough for Pharaoh to believe. He said, "Yeah, you conspired behind me. You made a plan, and then so he killed them, right? If I'm not mistaken." But it didn't matter. Even if there were 19 miracles, Pharaoh would not have believed in it. And most people don't. They don't believe, even if they see miracles. They rejected them and were utterly convinced of their wrong ways due to their arrogance. Note the consequences for the evildoers. David and Solomon. We endowed David and Solomon with knowledge, and they said, "Praise God for blessing us more than many of his believing servants." Solomon was David's heir. He said, "O people, we have been endowed with understanding the language of birds, and all kinds of things have been bestowed upon us. This is indeed a real blessing." Mobilized in the service of Solomon were his obedient soldiers of jinns and humans, as well as the birds, all at his disposal. So God is telling us, right, that He has given Solomon and David like these special things that they had in their time. They could understand the language of the birds, and there were also a lot of other things that were bestowed upon them. They say here. One of those things, like for example, Solomon could control the winds. If he wanted an area to have rain falling down, he could control it, and he could do it. Um, there was also this thing which David could do with metal, and God taught them how to build these shields, metal shields, I think, that they could use if there was war. And all these things are blessings from God, but also a test, right? God is also testing with the things that He's given. In 17, we read, "Mobilized in the service of Solomon were his obedient soldiers of jinns and humans, as well as the birds, all at his disposal." So I found this very special, right? That God specifically gives the birds. And we know from the incident where Solomon was searching for the what was his name, Hutut, and he couldn't see him. So these birds, Solomon was also using to communicate, right, to send messages to people. And today we have these airplanes where we send letters and packages and that kind of stuff. And we have the internet, right? So it's a similar thing, I think. And he had that in his time, sending the birds someone um, to some place and give the message. When they approached the valley of the ants, one ant said, "O you ants, go into your homes, lest you get crushed by Solomon and his soldiers without perceiving." And the footnote says, oh no, let me read 19:2. And I said, "He smiled and laughed at her statement and said, 'My Lord, direct me to be appreciative of the blessings you have bestowed upon me and my parents, and to do the righteous works that please you. Admit me by your mercy into the company of your righteous servants.'" Yeah, so he's hearing the ant, right? How the ant talked, and he directly um, thanks God, and he says, "Direct me to be appreciative of the blessings you have bestowed upon me." So this is a good example of someone, and we should definitely follow this. All the things that God has given us, the cars, the family, the children, the money, like everything, the things that we eat, the provisions that He has given us, we should always be appreciative of the things that God has given to us, and we should commemorate God in every possible way, and every moment that we can actually. So in the footnote it says, "The more unusual the events in a given surah, the stronger the mathematical evidence supporting them. This helps assure us that such strange phenomena are indicative of God's power. The surah's initials, TS, constitute a complex part of the mathematical miracles related to the Quranic initials. The unusual birth and miracles of Jesus are in Surah 19, which is prefixed with 5 Quranic initials. See Appendix 1 for the details. Yeah, so in Surah 19, you have, it also starts with these initials. And we read here that like an ant speaking to the other ants, and Solomon hearing this, it can sound very strange to the eyes, and it can be very difficult for some people to believe in it, that this really happened, that this thing occurred. Also, the same thing with Jesus, or the one who was dead and he became to life again. Even people who believe in God, they have doubts about it. There's this Turkish guy in Turkey who preaches, like, also he preaches also Quran. Um, in one of these videos and interviews that he has given, he was speaking about Jesus when Mary came to the town and pointed towards Jesus, and Jesus started talking. So in this verse, he says, yeah, actually, she pointed out to him, but after 25 years, Jesus came back and he spoke. He couldn't say that, yeah, this really happened. A baby, just a newborn baby could speak, and this is a miracle. He couldn't say this. And this person is like a preacher of Quran, so-called a preacher of Quran. But these people are like working for the devil, right? Working for the Satan, working for Satan. And that's that, and this makes this miracle 19 a very good, what is it called, an indicator to show who are true believers or not. Because, like, even these people who believe in the Quran, they don't accept it. They don't accept these messengers. But like with this 19, of course, this assures us that this is from God, and that these things really happened. 20. He inspected the birds and noted, why do I not see the hoopoe? Why is he missing it? This was the verse I mentioned. And he said, I will punish him severely or sacrifice him unless he gives me a good excuse. He did not wait for long. The hoopoe said, I have news that you do not have. I have brought to you from Sheba some important information. Yeah, so, and we can read here that the bird, he was also in a place where Solomon didn't know that he was there. So these birds were also probably free birds. They could go wherever they want, but they were also in the service of Solomon. And this hoopoe, probably, like, this is what I understand, he went to a place, a far place maybe, or a place where Solomon didn't know that people were there, and then the hoopoe gives him this information about them, not believing in the God, and that there are other people. But those are things in the other verses, which we can read afterwards. So, oh, God willing, I will finish here. If there are any questions, or if there are things that you guys want to add, please do so.
MashaAllah, brother, very good.
MashaAllah, thank you.
Sure, thank you so much.
MashaAllah, God bless you, brother.
So actually, I had a comment when we were talking about Surah 26, right? So it talks about the rights, people standing up for their rights, and I mean, yeah, we always need to stand up for God, but these verses that are talking about the rights, these are talking about they stand up for their rights. Like if we look inside the Quran, there are many rights that God talks about. There's rights of inheritance, there's women's rights, and there's just people have rights. Based on the standard that God has given, based on the justice system that God talks about. One prominent thing we have is human rights. Our rights to worship God alone freely, our rights to inheritance and things like that. So um, our right to, let's say, travel. Our right to vote, our right to do whatever things everybody does. We all have equal rights in that sense, right? And so there are people in this world that will not care about your rights, and that will try to infringe upon your rights for whatever reason. Selfish reasons. Let's say someone is greedy for money or power, and they a part of their goal would be to strip you of your rights so they can have what they want, and be selfish, right? And so sometimes people who are righteous, they're under the impression that because they're supposed to be righteous, and because they're supposed to trust in God and all that, they shouldn't stand up for their rights. They shouldn't go after it, because God will deal with the situation, and God will give them more and stuff like that, right? Which is all true. God will, whatever is, whatever is destined to be given to you, whatever you deserve, God knows. Let's say, if we talk about provisions, right? Let's say we're talking about inheritance rights. So God knows whatever you're going to get, whatever provisions you're going to get, and it's all predetermined by God, and we can't get more or less than that. But that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up for your rights. God says this is a quality of the believers, that when injustice befalls them, you know, it's talking about injustice befalling the human beings, they stand up for their rights, and standing up for your rights is not just important for you, it's also important for others, because if you don't stand up for your rights, tomorrow someone else's rights are going to be violated as well. So it's a way of advocating righteousness and justice in the society also, that when there's injustice towards you or towards any other human being, they stand up for their rights. And God wants us to do that. And it is nothing, and God says there's nothing wrong, certainly nothing wrong when people stand up for their rights, right? Because sometimes people think that they shouldn't, and they might feel like, oh, it's difficult, and why should I have to go through this? But no, God tells you you should stand up for your rights. Justice, God advocates justice. And, if your rights are being infringed upon, you have every reason to stand up for your rights. By the way, the verse I was referring to was 26 to 27, the last verse of the surah that we talked about. And also, I mean, I think in a good way, it's also talking about the poets, right? The verses are referring to poets, and poets who commemorate God frequently and are standing up for their rights. They're exempted, right? So it's like all poetry is not bad. I mean, there's like poetry that is about so many different things. There's poetry about falling in love, or this and that, and or politics, and those and poetry in that sense. Their loyalty is shifting according to the situations. I mean, but sometimes, but the for the righteous poets, their loyalty is always towards one thing. They're devoted to God alone, and they would write about these things, right? They would write about commemorating God. Frequently, their poetry would be about God, when seen, and then they would write about things like standing up for the rights. Like for example, you'd hear a lot of poetry where it's just nonsense, but then a lot of times you'll hear people write about things that are about the situations that people encounter in this world, whether it's people's rights or things like that. Like you see, for example, a lot of people sing about human rights, right, all the time, in different ways, or justice in the society, or injustice in the society. So those types of poetry, in other words, or poets who sing about that are not astray, or write about that, are not astray.
Yeah, so in even in Sunni Islam, right, or or Wahhabis probably, singing is not allowed, poetry is not allowed. There are so many things that they have prohibited.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead, sorry. It reminded me of
yes,
something I want to share.
yeah, you have also these are the letters of David, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
Gospels. Yeah, like, and
Mm-hmm.
the messenger gives that as an example, and I have read those. Like, you can clearly read, love towards God, and
Mm-hmm.
which what is better than that, right? What is better than really loving God so much and writing things about God? Mashallah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's interesting. It just reminded me of this one comment I received, like not comment, it was I was going through the reviews on the Android app for submission, and someone wrote this review. It's like he said there are no songs, like, I mean, it's supposed to be someone who's following Quran alone, right? Your submitter, right? And this so-called submitter is writing this, okay? And he says there's no songs in the Quran. He says stop preaching falsehood, and remove the songs. And my name is Hassan from Tamil Nadu, India. Like, so
Oh, I
proud of
remember that too. Yeah.
right. And so, mashallah, so we know that there are songs and commemorating God. You can sing about God says, sing His praises and worship God. And we know the messenger of the covenant also that there were children at the time. Even in the audios we were seeing, they were singing and everything, and the messengers, admiring them and stuff like that. And we know that Psalms of David that God gave to him, he would sing them. He would have instruments to play with them, as far as I understand. I mean, we don't have the mention of the instrument that he was playing and the Quran, but at least we know that they were singing about God, right? They were praising God, and so you can't say. And when God says you should sing His praises, you can't say that there's no songs, right? What do you sing? You sing you sing a song, so something that you sing, and so also yeah, I mean,
And
whatever
God didn't
makes you
prohibit it.
remember God. Yeah, yeah, exactly. God didn't prohibit it, so if something's not prohibited in the Quran and people start prohibiting that, they're attributing lies to God, right? And twisting and making the religion difficult. So that is a horrendous offense, mashallah. As you shared also about messengers, I mean, attributing a lie to God is a horrendous crime, right? It's a big sin, gross sin. And then, the biggest lie that you can come up with, the worst lie you can come up with about God, is to say you're a messenger when you're not a messenger of God, right? A false messenger.
MashaAllah, brother. There's also a verse in the Quran where God says that the angels sing praises to God as well. We can take that.
Inshallah, yes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, brother. MashaAllah.
Yeah, one of the important things was actually, right. Today you have a lot of people. They don't say that they are messengers. They don't say, but if you look at them in how they behave and what they do, They are like these leaders of these big groups where like thousands and sometimes millions of people come and follow, and they pretend to be the messengers of the messengers, or they pretend to do the job of the messengers, right? In my eyes, it's like the same. Like these people, they don't say, I am a messenger of God, I receive like revelations, but they fool people in a way that they are divine and that people should follow them. And in almost all of them, we can clearly see idolatry, and they can never denounce idolatry, like it says there.
Yeah, there's actually well, there's a lot of people in Christianity that claim to be prophets. Like it falls under this new movement that's really taken off like in the last 30 years, but it's like a new apostolic reformation. And so everybody and their brother and their sister, uh, like you see them get these anointings, quote unquote, and then the only proof that they come with, it's funny, every single one of them, they just tell their congregation, like, oh, God told me this, and God, I woke up and I spoke to God, and God told me this. And it's really hilarious. But it's like you said, they fool so many people. Like so many people, I mean, they even have like some big names in Los Angeles, like this one woman, Catherine Crick, who's gaining popularity. But yeah, she's really bad, you know. But yeah, they call themselves prophets and prophetesses, or the feminine version, and apostles, you know.
Yeah, I see also sometimes white light when I wake up, brother. That doesn't make me that doesn't make me a prophet.
Right? Yeah, I mean, imagine it's like Satan. It's probably tricking them. If they probably lied, but even if they did see something, it's probably Satan.
Yeah, I prefer yellow light, white light.
And that's the big thing with Apostle Paul.
It was white.
Inshallah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when it comes to idol worship, what these people stand for in general is idol worship, right? Even a false messenger comes, and he's not necessarily going to tell people to worship him per se, right? Like there's many false messengers in submission, and they will not tell these people to. They'll say, oh yeah, we should worship God alone, right? And then people think, well, he's not saying to worship him or commemorate him, he's just talking about God alone. But the very fact that these people are telling them to do things other than what God is telling them to do, by definition, that becomes idol worship, right? Like, for example, God is telling you to pray 5 times a day, and then some one comes and says, no, Rashad was wrong, and you're supposed to pray 3 times a day, or something like that. That when you follow that person, you're making him an idol, because now someone other than God, you're following someone other than God who's telling you to do something other than what God has told you to do. And that's why we see that, God says that these Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, they have these idols, uh, including the Jews and Christians, for example, and the Muslims, right? Their leaders that they're following, they're advocating idol worship also, but these people are also being idolized, because whatever these people tell them, they follow them like they're supposed to follow God. They follow these people to do whatever they want. Some of these cult leaders will even tell people to end their lives. They'll end their lives, right? We have, like, for example, suicide bombers. We have all these other, apocalyptic type people making these prophecies, and then people just end up taking their lives in like groups and stuff, for example. So that's a, well, rather extreme example, right? But the idea is, if anybody tells you to say or do anything other than what God is telling you to do, and if you obey them, you're actually idolizing them at that point. So in that way, like, and you can see that with all the false messengers, that they can never really advocate the truth. Somewhere down the line, you'll see like they're deviating, and they're saying things like, oh, well, God made a mistake here, or the messenger made a mistake here, and you're supposed to do this instead, and like, then you think like, well, why? I mean, did God change his mind? Like, or, did God not know who to send as a messenger? Did he make a mistake? Of course not.
Yeah, and most of the times these people, they ask for a wage. They ask for money.
Money too, yeah.
Yeah, like most of the times, because you know, like they need to be able to keep this going on, and for that you need money for these people. And that's also something what we have learned from the Quran, of course, that true messengers of God, they never ask for a wage. They don't ask anything for themselves. And the messenger of the covenant clearly said, right, that he is like making sure that more money goes out from his own pocket than that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Like comes
Exactly.
in, not in the way that someone gives it to him, but you know, he makes sure that that he doesn't keep any money or anything at all, and he spends it in the cause of God.
Yeah, speaking about that, I saw a video. Um, sorry, I had an incoming call. I saw a video yesterday. There's a pastor that Christian pastor or quote unquote Christian pastor that's selling people land in heaven. Like you can go to him, and somehow I think in 2017 he said he had this vision where God somehow struck a deal, and he's able to loan out or sell people land in heaven. And like the more you pay, the more cubic feet, the more cubic feet or whatever you can get. And people
Well,
are
that's
actually
good,
like giving him money though.
Mashallah, that's crazy, brother. The ignorance of people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they believe such a thing.
Mashallah. Yeah, I'd love to buy some land in heaven. Well, thank God, you know, I mean, we know how to buy land in heaven. You know, we don't have to spend any money.
Yeah, you need to build a website, like a website to, you know, buy housing and selling. You know, if you
Yeah, and you
like,
can do
imagine.
construction. You can
Yeah,
do a lot
yeah,
of construction.
yeah.
You
Like
can get
if you
money
need
for
money,
construction.
you just
Because
say,
you can say, you
okay.
know, by the time you come to heaven, then you're going to have to build something, you know, just getting land. And, you
Yeah.
know, if you want to build a palace, then you have to pay the Jaffer for construction.
Yeah,
Right.
if you need money, you just say, "Oh, I have like so many square meters there in heaven, like
Hmm.
I can sell a part of it." Okay. But
By
it's
the
really
time you get to
strange.
heaven, it will be ready, right? I mean, otherwise
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to wait.
It's really strange to
You have to
see
live in
that
a tent or something.
people really believe in this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, usually it's a lot of like old people, you know, like they bank on these people that are old and stuff and maybe on medication or whatnot, you know. They're not in their even
Uh,
full frame of mind to even understand some of these things, comprehend religion. Like they're confused already as adults, right? But when they're getting older, a lot of these people, they have money, maybe they may not have like you know, dependents or whatnot, you know. They may have a dog or something, you know. And then they're
yeah.
old, and so they see these things, creatures on TV, and they just shell out money, you know, out of
Mm-hmm.
ignorance. Yeah.
Right, brother. True, true.
Mm. Yeah, mashallah. This the life of Solomon and David, you know, that we read about is very, very fascinating. And you know, we read about today about the communication with the animals, you know. And I know recently we had, you know, some people with some really, extreme conclusions that they based on these verses. We understand that, you know, these were not regular birds, for example. These were birds that had a human being able to communicate with them in a way like the hoopoe, you know. I mean, this hoopoe was able to understand a human being. Like if we had the power that God had given Solomon, you know, like to be able to communicate with the birds, then we could teach them a lot more things too, right? For example, we can only teach them certain things because we don't know how to talk to them, right? We don't know how to explain things to the birds. We only do things by actions, right, and by treats and things like that. And so we're able to train them in a certain way. But if you were able to talk to them the way Solomon was talking to them, they could do a lot more for him, right? Because he could train them in this way. So the fact that Sheba in Sheba's situation, the bird flew over and heard the entire conversation and came back and reported back to Solomon. It doesn't mean that every bird will go anywhere and understand anything any human being is saying, or a dog for that matter, right? So obviously they have brains and they understand things, but it doesn't mean that they can understand languages that they were never taught, right? You have to train animals to, or just like you have to train humans to understand. Like if I go to Germany and I don't speak German, there's no way I'll just go and start speaking unless it's by God, some miracle, right? And so we have to just remember that. And there's nowhere, and actually there's many verses that as we went further into the discussion, there's many verses where God talks about animals not being able to understand, right? A lot of things. So um, we just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and people went like far by saying that we can still communicate with them, right? Because of these verses. But yeah, like you said, the devil is trying to bring people to the most right or to the most left, and do these and think of these
Yeah, and
extreme things.
repulse, right, and repulse people. Because I mean, imagine if that logic or that type of idea were to spread, and then I mean, you have somebody interested in submission or reading the Quran, and they hear that from these people, they're going to think they're crazy. And I mean, if that was the case, then like every humans would like probably train some birds or something to go take money from everybody. I mean, you don't know what like people would do. I mean, they would train. There would be have a whole legion of birds just come out of nowhere, and I mean, if they could understand, us, and if people,
Yeah, like in Dr. Doolittle, you have all these animals communicating with Eddie Murphy.
Mashallah, brother. Also, this was something given to Solomon, like specifically, it was like a blessing, reading the Quran. It shouldn't be like something you take, like we were explaining, it was given to them. It's a great blessing. So, with the verses of that.
It says clearly this was a blessing given to them. So this means that they could do it. Not everyone could do it. And also, like it is a part of a miracle, right? So if everyone could do it, then it's not really a miracle.
All right, brother. Mashallah.
Yeah, I mean, but they were saying that they can understand the birds, right? But since the birds can understand them, like it's interesting because like how they were posting pictures of all the birds that were coming to their home, and it's like, oh, this bird is this, and this bird comes out, and I was just thinking like, oh, they just like birds, and they're really fond of them. But I
They
think
were
they were really
talking to them.
They were talking to them.
I'm gonna go home and I'm going to talk to my fish.
So, Masha, we have some New faces. We have brother Jamie, who has just joined for the first time. Brother, would you like to introduce yourself? You have to unmute your microphone. Click on the microphone to unmute yourself and make your comment if you like. Okay. Maybe next time.
Also, brother, in the Surah poets, the poets, in verse 22 to 27,
Rafa, I think we're having trouble hearing you. There's a lot of noise in the. It's like a radio.
okay, brother, hold on.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I had the earphones on, that's one. So, verse
Okay.
27, all the time I used to read this, like before we talked about it right now, I always thought they were talking about the poets, but I had kind of like different ideas, like maybe they're just talking to like the regular person and not the poets directly. And so they were God is talking to the parrot about the poets directly. 227.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
saying the
I actually
poets.
thought the same thing. I'm sorry, go ahead, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think I
No,
have the
go ahead.
same. But yeah, I just thought like the title. I didn't know that the poets is referring to I guess the prophets, because I saw like the poets were like, because you know how like they had poets at the time of Muhammad that would trick the people and stuff and were real good with their words. But I guess it makes sense, because look at all the prophets that were mentioned in this surah and like all the examples. But yeah, mashallah.
MashaAllah.
All right. So, are there any other comments or questions? Any off-topic questions? Okay. Jeremy says, by the grace of God, I'd like to thank you for allowing me part of the study. Brother, not yet understand how your app. I not yet understand how your app works. Okay.
Also, brother, I have a comment and
Yeah, go ahead.
in verse 12, Surah the verse 12, where he's God is telling Moses, talking to him directly, telling him that this will be one sign of the 9 signs, and it's just a blessing, the miracle we have now that's to the people, even the Egyptians that are still alive now, even like God said, to for and his people. So even the people that Egyptian now, even it's still these same miracles still add to them, because we know they happen. Through the miracle, with the miracle of 19, that they occurred. So we could always look back and realize that these events did happen. MashaAllah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mashallah, we have the mathematical signs. And also wanted to, I think one of the point I wanted to make was that about the mathematical design of the Quran, the mathematical structure of the Quran, right? So we know also that, the number 19 is God's signature in the universe. And so if we had, let's say, the Torah intact or something like that, right? So we would also see the same thing, we'd also see the mathematical structure there. But the thing is that, it's been distorted and it's not in the original language, and, it's been added to, tampered with, so it's no longer, we can no longer see that, right? But we can see, like, in the remnants of the prayers from, like, the writing of the Rabbi Judah, that, there were remnants of that found in the mathematical structure of the prayer. So it exists, but it's not intact anymore. But in the Quran, we know that the Quran has been preserved by God's, divine decree, and so everything is mathematically structured, and we can verify, which is a huge blessing for us, right? Subhanallah, we can not thank God enough for having that certainty to know that everything we're reading is from God, the truth from God.
MashaAllah, brother, yes. God be glorified. It's a true blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Something so amazing, MashaAllah.
Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. All right, so mashallah, if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brother Jaffer, for leading the study. And thank you to Brother Abdullah for streaming. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless. Salam alaikum.
God bless.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.